First of all, can you put that graphic back up?
Yeah, absolutely.
If everybody's watching this on YouTube or whatnot, you have to check out this graphic that Swobes did for us. It's a really good likeness of Trev in a very studious, kind of pondering image, making an important decision here. So hats off to Swobes for that really great graphic. Anyway, so I mean, we had a lot of the coaches that we've been interested in or have talked about in our fantasy football draft. Honky, you have a great team, by the way. I mean, you've got just a murderer's row of potential coaching candidates there.
Thanks for the picks, guys.
Hey, look at that. There we go.
Somehow, Dave, I either lost track of yours or you got penalized for tampering and lost a few draft picks. So yeah, that's what I wrote down for you anyway. So.
Oh, see, I would have taken Craig Bowl for the altitude
yet. So.
Yeah, I'd have taken Craig Bowl for the altitude in the Big Ten. You guys screwed up not getting him for me. All right.
Well, we still have more. We can have more rounds of this. See, the key is that we get the name right. I want to be able to say that when the name is selected, one of us has that coach on our team, and then we can be like, well, see, we told you. We talked about that, guy.
Well, Boomer, who has Mickey on it?
That would be me with the very first pick
bring that back up there.
Draft, so.
You got him with the first pick of the draft? That was okay, now I respect that. That's good. I'm glad Mickey was the first pick because that's
I like how you make my
guy.
worst possible picks my first possible picks up there. Like, you know, like
I picked Sean,
I picked Sean Payton first or something, right? Like
So
I got Hugh Freeze.
You don't have Lance Leipold.
Yeah, I have Lance
Lacey Leipold.
Ooh, Lacey Leipold. That's
his sister. She's also quite skilled in offensive game planning.
Well, what's funny too is that you've got Hugh Freeze on there, and I didn't realize until I don't even know what I was paying attention to. I didn't realize why Hugh Freeze got fired from Ole Miss, and then I saw an article on it today, and I was just like, "Oh, that's perfect. He's on Honky's list."
Whatever.
God bless the South. SEC.
Well, we had Lance Leipold going 5-0 now. Kansas ranked for the first time since when was this? 2008 again, probably. It seems like a running,
it seems about right.
Date for us. And they actually have ESPN Game Day coming to Lawrence with TCU in town. So,
TCU also undefeated, Dave, if I remember right. So.
Yes, they are.
Who predicted that to start the season? Did anyone pick undefeated Kansas and undefeated TCU?
Squaring off it up. Yeah, with
Probably
game
day.
Yeah. Go figure, right? I mean, that's the beauty of college football and the regular season. There's no doubt about that. But an important one for Leipold, Matt Campbell with another loss. It was a very competitive game, obviously. Baylor won, right? If I remember right.
No, Baylor lost.
No, Baylor lost.
Oh, Baylor lost. You're right. Oklahoma State.
Baylor lost,
So
and now Iowa State.
Maybe Gundy's a dark horse. You know,
and Iowa State with Campbell there. He has a big game this weekend in Ames against K-State and a resurgent K-State team with Martinez playing quite well and an offense that really suits him well. I got to give the Wildcats a lot of credit. I love what they're doing with them. There's a lot of things they're doing with them. I wish we would have done with them, but that's a
They've had reduced the workload on them quite a bit, especially in games that they didn't need them. And then when they really did need him against Oklahoma, he put together the type of game-winning drive. Right, so K-State. Chris Kleiman was doing a great job down there. Wisconsin, on the other hand, gets blown out by Illinois at home. Maybe someone who should be on that list, and I think it is, at least in our pool of candidates, is Brett Bielema. He is proving that Wisconsin was not just a system head coach, and that the Arkansas kind of debacle that he had down there for several years isn't really indicative of what he can do in the Big Ten, because he's got Illinois right in the right spot right now. They're playing really well, and they dominated that game versus Wisconsin so much that former head coach of Wisconsin, Paul Chryst, was let go on Sunday, and that's only after 5 games. Honky, when you heard that, that had to come to. And now there was some rumblings the week before that something like this could happen. I was like, really? They're really going to do this? But sure enough, getting blown out at home and only having 2 rushing yards apparently is not enough for Wisconsin, and they have fired a head coach with, I think, 67 wins.
Yeah, you look at his record. Huskies posted a tweet of all of his records, and minus the 4-3 season of COVID that they had. I mean, there's a whole lot of. There's a 13-1. There's 11-3s. I think last year they were like 9-4. But and of course, Huskies posted something along the lines of who would do that? Who would fire a coach that's won nothing but 9 games every year? And then some of the responses were hilarious, saying, "Well, what about Nebraska?" It's like, yeah, joke.
Sarcasm in Twitter. It's
they don't quite get it right. But this is it just feels different. The way that this is the first time it's ever happened in Nebraska at this time in the year, but now you're seeing this more and more. Colorado did it a week or so after their AD came out and supported their head coach. Most of these ones seem like they were no-brainers. You had to do it. Colorado's so bad. Frost, it got to be so bad it became a no-brainer. But with Chryst, it feels like, the first opportunity, there was no work your way through it. He was done, and they wanted him gone. Now maybe there's pressure with Leonhard to try to keep him, and this is a way to do it. I don't know, since he's showing up on a lot of people's early list.
So
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. God, Dave, I keep doing that. I'm so sorry, man. I just
the host directs traffic, Rob, and I'm going to point to you right now. Go for it, my friend.
Okay, good, perfect. So I host a trivia night every single Sunday night. I've been doing it for like 9 years now, and it's cool because I get to meet a lot of people. And some of the people that I met last night here in town are from Wisconsin. You're right, Boomer Manners. But so I was talking with them because they're big Badger fans, or Green Bay fans, or they're Badger fans. And I was asking them how they felt about it. And one of the things that they said was they think, we'll talk Wisconsin conspiracy. They think that the reason why they fired Chryst now is because they were afraid that Leonhard might be swooped up by another team like Nebraska. And they were looking long-term, saying like, okay, well, he's interim now, but don't be surprised, if he comes in there and coaches well this year, that he basically gets, I don't know, would it be comparable to like an NFL extension, or I don't know how you would,
you would just get hired as the head coach.
Just get hired as the head coach right then and there. But so they think that that's kind of been the long-term plan, because a lot of, I guess, I don't know if it's the Wisconsin message boards or Wisconsin Twitter, because I don't follow any of that. That's kind of
you don't follow the Wisconsin message boards, Rob. Where is your college football fandom? I don't understand what you're doing.
I'm trying.
We put him in charge of following the Rutgers message boards, Dave.
Yeah, I'm following the Rutgers message board. Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's an interesting theory, I suppose. But trying to basically lock down Leonhard, they fired Chryst and spent. I think they negotiated down to $11 million on the buyout.
What's interesting to me, though, is the same thing that's going to happen with Leonhard essentially is kind of the same thing with Joseph. Now they have a runway of being an interim, 8 games, 7 games, whatever it's going to be. In Joseph's case, we're talking about like, can he do enough? Can he win enough to win the position? And in Leonhard's case, it almost feels like it's his to lose. Maybe minus Liepold. Maybe that there's you were kind of saying beforehand, Dave. There's probably 2 guys, but with Leonhard, it's like it's his to lose. Well, what if they don't get better? What if the next 7 games? What if he goes 2-5 and it's it's not a great finish to the Wisconsin team? Is that just totally okay? We still want him there, or can he do damage to himself in the next 7 games? Is he an interim in waiting, or is he an interim? And we'll see what he does, because it feels, in that sense, it feels different from Joseph with us. Like Joseph, it feels like he has to do something. By the way, I'm loving what he's doing, but it feels like he has to do something with Leonhard. It's almost like they made this move so that they can try to keep Leonhard.
Yeah, Boomer. I've listened to all the national podcasts, and there's been theories abounding, just like Rob was describing there, right? And it's like you could make the case of like the question wasn't really necessarily the why in general. You can look at saying that Wisconsin seems to be trending in the wrong direction, even though Paul Chryst had an 8 or 9 win season last year. They don't seem to be as good as they were just 3 or 4 years ago, and that they felt like maybe a change was going to be needed. But why now, right? And you have to look at a theory of saying like, well, they wanted to give Jim Leonhard 7 games, to Honky's point, to actually prove himself here. If he just goes 4-3, that's probably maybe enough. And they're like, that's the guy we wanted anyway. And now we can hire him without having some other school try to go after him. I also heard the same theory of like, well, they legitimately want to go over Lance Liepold, and they didn't want to do that behind Paul Chryst back. So they wanted to fire him now so they could actively go out and start going after Lance Liepold, who is from Wisconsin, didn't go to Wisconsin, but Wisconsin Whitewater as a player and then a 6-time national championship coach there. And that's their target, right? I mean, what other theories have you heard?
Yeah, those are the only things that would seem to make any real sense to me at this point, unless there's something Paul Chryst did in the background that hasn't leaked out and, gave people reason to fire him. But yeah, those would be the two most likely scenarios if you're trying to like game theory this out, why you would do these things to give yourself a chance to negotiate on this sort of stuff and get in on that. Dave, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, no, I think a third theory, maybe one that just is a little bit different, is the idea that they didn't want to give Paul Chryst a chance to fix this over the next 7 games. The point is that they really wanted to make a change, and even though they're 2-3 right now, they took advantage of the big loss right now to cut ties because they really felt like they needed to make a change for whatever reason. I keep in mind this is a new athletic director. This is not Barry Alvarez, which, I mean, Barry would not make this move, I don't think, right? It doesn't. Paul.
It seems unlikely. Yeah.
Right. So new AD thinks he has support of the boosters, wants to go a different direction, take advantage of a bad loss, and make the move now. And if Leonhard works out, great. And if not, we're transitioning to Leipold, right? But they want to make a change no matter what. It was preemptive to keep Paul Chryst from actually saving his job or causing it more of a challenge to fire. Because if you think about, let's say Nebraska, I mean, I'm not saying that this would have worked at all, but if Eichhorst would have fired Bo after losing 38-9 to somebody or whatever, opposed to waiting until the end of the season and firing him after he beats Iowa, maybe it would have been better received, right? But you wait to the end of the year and he actually wins the game that you think he's going to lose, and everybody's like, what the heck did you just do, right? But you fire him when he's 2-3, you don't give him a chance to get back to 7, 8, or 9 wins.
That's all about timing. Did he say anything about gravitating to mediocrity?
And I think he did say something about the status of their program. I think he didn't reference any other program.
It does seem to be a little disarray, like you said, Dave. Though I mean, recruiting wise, or just their skill players are just they're not good. I mean, their receivers aren't good. Graham Mertz is just, for all the hype he came in with and had 1 or 2 good games.
He's on the quarterback, yeah.
Well, he's done absolutely nothing there since then, and the running game isn't what it was or what you'd expect out of a Wisconsin team. So. You're probably right in some degree that this was a good chance to do this sort of thing. It's kind of akin to Alberts giving Frost that chance to, make the change in this season to try to make things better. And when he didn't, it was an easy trigger to pull because there wasn't really any debate at this point that, hey, this isn't working. We need to make a change. And maybe that's what is it McIntosh? Is that the athletic director?
McIntosh, yeah.
McIntosh. Okay, I know something. Some sort of Apple. So that or Gala or
a Gravenstein or something.
Yeah, something like that. So
as long as it's not the same as Granny Smith.
Right, yeah, no Granny Smith. So we got that. But yeah, it is interesting. I'll be curious to see where they go with this, and because that is a big roll of the dice, though. If you're hoping your unproven defensive coordinator is going to be that head coach that a lot of people think he could be, but there's no guarantee on anything like that. That's asking, it's a pretty good roll of the dice. If you're going to fire somebody like Chryst who had success. I mean, that's why I almost think they did this just right now in case they want to go the Leipold route. They can kind of get their hooks in early on that. Again, there's no guarantee to get him, but I think it gives them the chance to get him if they wanted it. So that's probably why they did it, I would think. So.
Rob, I mean, from a culture perspective, I mean, compared to the Nebraska fire just a few weeks ago, I mean, a lot of the players have said, hey, Scott Frost's our guy and everything, but they didn't like go down with the ship per se on tweets or anything like that. But Wisconsin has Allen, their running back, saying, hey, I mean, everybody in the locker room was in support of our head coach. We didn't want to see this happen. And then you put your defensive coordinator, who might be your next head coach, in that position to kind of fix that. That's difficult for Jim Leonhard a little bit, I think. I mean, if he actually goes 4-3 or 5-2, that's pretty impressive considering the players are probably pretty angry right now.
I mean, I don't want to go down that road because I don't want to say the players at Nebraska didn't support Frost, right? Like I can tell you.
I didn't. I think they do, sorry, but they didn't verbalize it.
No, they didn't verbalize it. But I also think that for once, you know, our media people were just like, hey guys, like we can talk about this in private. You know, we have counselors on the side to help you through your problems. But I mean, they, you know, but I do think I think maybe we just handled it to the point to where, and there was some people on our team that like came out and said some stuff, but it wasn't really like damning or it wasn't super covered in the media, right? Where, you know, like, oh, hey, here's some things that we weren't doing, like the tackling, right? I mean, like, you know, they talked a little bit about the culture, but I know for a fact that some of the players, some of these guys were upset that Frost was fired, right? Like, I mean, I know.
Yeah, there's just such different.
I literally got a phone call from a mom, but it's different.
Yeah, I understand. We heard the phone call, right? Yeah. So Honky wants to jump in. I think.
Yeah, it's just such different situations, and again, in Frost's case, it was at a point where it had to happen. And what is interesting to me with Frost and now Joseph, 2 games later, essentially, and with his first victory. Again, that video in the locker room, how that team, you know, you would not know it wasn't Frost or it wasn't Joseph's team. It is Joseph's team now, and the way that they support him, they've gotten around him, and also it's something I kind of was mentioning before we went live here, and we've got a little bit of video coming up too that kind of just keeps highlighting this, and we'll talk about recruiting in a second. This feels like Joseph's team because he's only been here 10 months, but half the damn team seems like he brought him here. I mean, our top receiver, who's going to potentially break every record here, is absolutely a Joseph guy. The quarterback who's throwing the ball to him is here because of Joseph. The running back, you know, he talked about Anthony Grant, and I'll show the video later. He talks about the recruiting of him, and man, he was as involved as anyone getting him here. This team, Joseph already has such a connection to these guys. They're playing for him. There's just, and he's holding them accountable to things. God, I hope we get some wins for a whole ton of reasons, but I really like what I saw from game 4 to this, from an effort standpoint, from a discipline standpoint on the defensive side that we'll get to, all those things. This team is playing a lot better already. Now, you know, now you got stack wins. You got to do it again. You got to do it again. Keep getting better. All that. Get this game out of your head. The 24-hour rule. But Mickey seems to be the perfect guy for what we're needing right now. So this discussion about coaching searches, which will obviously continue to go on week after week, boy, if we keep seeing what we've seen out of him and the accountability that he does, my guy is right under our nose. He's right here, and that's pretty good too. I know he doesn't have the head coaching experience that would be ideal, but he's learning on the fly right now, and if he can get this ship righted, that tells me a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean,
so Boomer,
God, I'm bad at this tonight, aren't I? Go ahead.
It's okay, Rob. I wanted to wrap up the conversation with a question for Boomer on the comparison of the Nebraska and Wisconsin head coaching jobs. A popular, talking point of the national media is like trying to figure out ranking the Power 5 coaches. Colorado and Georgia Tech way at the bottom. Arizona State is in the middle, and then Wisconsin and Nebraska are kind of debated as, which one's a better job. And it's interesting to me because when you hear these guys speak, they talk about how Wisconsin's more stable and they have a better culture that's set in place. Even though someone like Lance Liepold would change their offensive culture entirely. I mean, he runs a different offense than Wisconsin's ever run under Barry Alvarez. So if they like Lance Leipold, it's a very different offensive philosophy there. But I mean, the culture that Wisconsin talks about is actually the Barry Alvarez, Nebraska culture that he brought and learned from Bob Devaney and others. So, I mean, I think it's just really intriguing, right?
Yeah, if anything, the events of the last few days have just proved that Wisconsin just copies everything from Nebraska. So, yeah, that's just a given here. So
very successfully, to their credit.
They've done it well. Don't get me wrong, but and that's such kind of a goofy thing to say. What's the better job, quote unquote? It's so situational. Wisconsin has certain advantages. Just because they've had more success recently, but like you said, culture-wise, they just kind of blew that up this week. I mean, they did. That stability that they've had
culture.
long. Now they've just showed, hey, we'll pull the trigger, mid-season if you're not performing, or we think there's somebody better, or for whatever reason they did that. That kind of unsettles that. This is that new AD. Nebraska fans, we know what can happen sometimes when a new AD comes in and tries to mix things up, what that can do to a program. So that can totally.
Is his name Sean McIntosh?
Yeah.
He looks like the big guy on Happy Gilmore. That the giant that they try to tee the ball.
Yeah, it kind of does. So
I'll see you in the parking lot.
Yeah,
and and one thing I kind of mentioned on Twitter this last week is people always say that, well, you're coming to the Big Ten West, which team's better suited for that. There's not going to be a Big Ten West in probably 2 years, so that's something else people have to consider, and people forget about that we don't even know what the conference schedule is next year, let alone what it's going to be in 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So who knows, what's going to be the better job. And again, it's going to depend on the person and what they want out of a program and what you think the ceiling is for it. So, and I think we've seen what Wisconsin's ceiling is with what they've done. So
I'll say one thing and then throw it out to anybody who wants to kind of wrap this up. But that idea that the Big Ten West is kind of going away. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It feels like that we're going to have a different structure here when UCLA and USC join here in 2 years. So to your point of Wisconsin, it's an easier path to the playoff because all you need to do is win the Big Ten West and you're in the Big Ten championship game. That's going to go away. I'm curious if the formula that Wisconsin and Iowa and to some degree Minnesota and now what Bielema is going to do at Illinois is been really successful in the Big Ten West, but maybe won't be as successful in the non-division Big Ten, where you maybe need to be able to finish in the top four, and that includes Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, USC, and you might need a little bit more explosive players. And what I was trying to get at there is that I think the interesting with Nebraska and the advantage potentially over Wisconsin, but it's a little muddled, is the amount of money we're willing to spend on a successful football program. Historically speaking, we have been all in on football for 5+ decades, essentially. And Wisconsin has been the opposite. They've had their chancellor notoriously quoting that Big Ten coaches get paid too much money, and that Brett Bielema, pretty much when he left, was like, look, these guys won't pay my coaching staff enough, and I'm moving on to Arkansas because I'm tired of these limitations financially for my coaches and contract lengths, all these different things.
Yeah, they wouldn't even spend for baseball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I wonder if anybody here thinks that this is a move by Wisconsin saying that this is a culture shift. Like they're ready to play big boy football, and we are going to go all in, and we don't care how much we have to pay our coach and the salary pool for our assistants, et cetera, because we want to compete in the new Big Ten in 2024.
Well, and in order to have that show off, you better have some success pretty early. Steve Peterson tried to do a lot of the same things here too. It was a culture shift, and we were going into the West Coast offense world, and we were getting into the 21st century of everything. When you start losing right away, it's like, oh no, I mean, and it's everything just to keep the support you already had. I agree with Boomer earlier where he said, some of those polls are so dumb. What job is better? It's better based on whoever the coach is. When Frost was the top coach in the country coming out in 2017, the best job in the country was Nebraska to him. And he was going to take Nebraska over literally any other job that was out there, right? It comes down to the individual. And then it comes down to if you have no allegiances to a certain school, the whole package, right? What's better, Nebraska or Wisconsin? Well, I mean, I'm going to say Nebraska, but NIL gets put into that. There's some of your money that you're talking about, Dave. Transfer portals. How are you going to get some of those instant, athletes, especially at some of the skill positions where Boomer, you were saying Wisconsin's been struggling. You want to go into transfer portal. You want to be able to use NIL. What about facilities? Nebraska's building a $160 million facility that'll be open by the time the next head coach is coaching a game next year. How does that compare to what Wisconsin has? All of those things play a role in addition to fan base. And our fan base continues to sell the stadium out at 1-3 after, 16 and 31. We still continue to sell it out. And I think we'll continue to sell out this, the rest of the season. It was funny though. I mean, last week, the media, I watched some radio show of Wisconsin guys, and they laid into Wisconsin and how much they thought they stunk. And, we get on our media guys sometimes for being hard here or there. I was like, that was nothing. I haven't heard anything come out of Nebraska media like they were getting it up there. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm comfortable with where Nebraska stands in terms of being able to get somebody that will be more than qualified here. I'm comfortable with all the things that we have in place. I just want to see good football, and that's what I like about what I'm seeing with some of the things Joseph is already starting to do and implement this season. I think that we can be seeing good football before we have to officially make a hire on whoever the next guy is.
Absolutely. All right, guys, that's a really good conversation about our head coaching search.